So those were the campaigns, and the latest opinion polls by Ipsos Synovate suggest that the country may be headed for a presidential runoff, and in fact they're saying that it's a neck-to-neck race, with Uhuru Kenyatta of the Jubilee coalition leading with 44.8%, coming in closely second with a margin of 0.4% is Raila Amolo Odinga with 44.4%. And we have Musalia Mudavadi at 5.2%. The numbers are on your screen as you see there. And they say that, actually Ipsos notes that none of the aspirants or even political parties garners more than the 50% plus one to have a clear win in round one. This clearly points out a runoff. In this, we have to actually invite Ipsos Synovate lead researcher Tom Wolf. Thank you very much for joining us on KTN. Very quick, this the latest research has a difference with the previous one. Maybe you can tell us why is this so, and how does that impact the final results?
Thank you. Well, first I should advise a little bit of caution. If you look at the margin of error for this survey of plus or minus 1.27%. The two leading candidates are in a statistical tie, which is, so it's not really statistically correct to say either one is leading the other, and that basically applies to our previous poll. The change in Uhuru Kenyatta's advantage is so small, it's measurable, but it's so small it's really not enough to make any overall difference. So therefore, to ask me what would account for a change, or for this change, is it's very, very difficult to do. I mean, we can of course refer to the poll that we did last week after the first presidential debate that was limited to just about 2/3 of the country who listened or watched that debate, and that was also limited to people who know English. And we saw a definitely measurable but very slight advantage that Uhuru Kenyatta got out of that debate over Raila Odinga. But is that something that will really stay in their minds through to election day? Especially as I saw in the media yesterday, the second debate, it appears, will not include Uhuru Kenyatta. So as again, your main point, I think everyone can agree with. There is no one as of now, at least from these results, who seems to be able to gain a first round victory. Whether there would be any psychological advantage of the leading candidate going into that second round after the IEBC announces that one or the other had a 0.5% lead or a 1% lead or whatever, I can't say, because this is new electoral and basically new constitutional territory for the country.
Okay, if I may ask, I'm just curious, are you attributing this change to the presidential debate that was, conducted recently, or what are you attributing the change to in consideration to the Jubilee team going up slightly?
Well, as I say, the change is so slight, it would be difficult to attribute it to anything, because there's really not that much to attribute. We can look at, as I say, the debate was one thing that we measured, but aside from that, campaign activity on the ground, it's just not possible on the basis of the research. If we had a change of 3, 4, 6, 7, whatever percent, you come back and ask me that question again. But I'm afraid on the basis of this very, very, very marginal, very modest, tiny change in the numbers, I really wouldn't want to attribute anything in particular to it, because the basic fact is of the 100% of presidential support or candidate support expressed in the poll, 90% went to these two individuals. That leaves another 10% that's out there. It's 7 or 7.5% of that is committed, distributed among the other 6 candidates. None of them have given any indication that they will drop out of this race. They're in it right up to March the 4th. There's about 2.5 to 3% that's undecided or wouldn't give us their answers. But it just doesn't seem that anyone can win this on the first round. Actually, let's talk about the undecided.
Let's talk about the undecided vote. There we saw that if at all we go for a runoff, 37% were undecided on who they want to be the president. What would you say about this? Is this a trend? Are we likely to, in fact, go for that runoff?
Well, as I have said, on the basis of these figures, a runoff is inevitable because neither candidate is within, or both of them are at 5% plus away from that 50% margin. Of course, we know that in every election in every country in the world, supporters of different candidates and political parties come out to vote on election day at different rates, at different levels. So I would say at the moment, the first round in this election, whether it's an outright win or simply getting a percentage advantage, everything depends upon turnout. That is, whether especially on the two main candidates, how effective is their what we call ground game or ground machinery going to be starting from really midnight on March the 4th through to the close of polls at, I believe, 5 o'clock in terms of getting their supporters out to vote. If their efforts yield basically similar results and there's not a huge difference in turnout, then you are correct. We would be going into a runoff. And then it really depends, again, not just on the turnout, because some people may say that one election day is enough in 5 years and they may stay home, and we don't know where that concentration of a refusal, if there is any, to go and vote would be. But really it would depend on what would the influence be of the other 6 candidates in encouraging their supporters who voted for them on the first round, who seem to be giving them in total between 6 and 8%. Where would their support be in terms of the two leading candidates? Would it go more towards one of the main candidates or the other, the two finalists? Or would it again be divided half and half, so we'd come off with basically a statistical tie, and then it would be up to the Electoral Commission through very, very, very careful ballot counting down to the last couple dozen ballots as to who the winner is. But so much can change in the more than 1 month before that runoff, even if we are going to have them, that it's far too early to say what would actually affect the dynamics of that contest.
Thank you very much for making that clear. Let me just ask you the final question, and this is out of curiosity. Yes, you've talked about the first presidential debate not having any impact on this result. Yes, we have a second debate, and yes, one of the candidates actually pulled out of that debate. If you look at it closely, will it have any impact after the debate is held?
Well, I do survey research. I'm not a fortune teller, or I'd probably be a lot richer than I am. So it's not for me to judge what might be the outcome of that. I would correct you a little bit and go back to your initial question, and that is, yes, Uhuru Kenyatta definitely got, at least as we measured it, and I believe there were a couple of other survey firms also, a little bit of an advantage, a little bit of a boost, tiny but barely measurable, out of that first debate. So the question arises, why would he decline to participate in the second when he performed so well in the first? That's up for his campaign team to answer that question. What impact it could have, again, I just can't say, but perhaps we'll do a quick poll after that second debate, and then I can come to you with some survey results and not just wild guesses, which I'm sure
this was your last poll, so I'm sure you'll not have your last guesses. But thank you very much, Tom Wolf, lead researcher at Ipsos Synovate, giving us an insight on the numbers that we just seen.